students who may come to school with extra educational challenges, whether they be from disadvantaged families or families with lots of money. Our elementary schools are simply not able to pay the level of attention to each student that's necessary to have a reasonable chance of really meeting their needs. And so I want to say that representing myself as a CBAC, I do not support this budget because I think the board, I realize you've got to vote for it, you've got to put a tax levy in place, but the board has not been through the budget carefully enough. I don't think it reviewed the high school scheduling data that was provided by PTA President's Council, which it obtained by a request from the business office. You still have lots of non-mandatory courses in the high school that are at section sizes well below 15. Some of them are necessary, but not all of them are. And there are lots of other activities in the district that I think, in the view of most parents, where they presented with the broad range of facts, would say are less important than making sure that all of our elementary students get the support and the start in school that they deserve. So I would urge the board to schedule time in its annual retreat this summer, maybe on an extended basis, to actually understand what's in the budget on a more detailed basis than I think some of you may do. Certainly below the summary level that's provided by the business office, and to ask some big questions about trade-offs. I think if I went back to the campaign statements of all of you, of anybody who's ever run for the board, they have all talked about making the hard decisions and budget trade-offs. Well, you needed to do so this year, in particular in response to the needs of Seth Boyden, but more generally the elementary schools. And I don't think anybody in the public would think that you actually had a discussion at that level. There is still time for you to do so after you adopt a budget, to press the administration on how well they're meeting elementary needs. And I would urge you to put that discussion on the agenda for May and June, and look at shifting some resources into the elementary schools, maybe additional support for your beleaguered administrators, so they can actually meet the needs and requests of parents, and certainly attempt to lower class size where necessary. Thank you.
Next on the budget is Ken Findley.
Hi, I'm Ken Findley. I have a son in Psalms and a daughter, Seth Boyden. I just want to very quickly make the point that Seth Boyden is not an island and we're not seeking special treatment. Because we are an Upton school, it's in the best interests of all the elementary schools that Seth Boyden thrives. And it's to the benefit of the middle and high schools that the Seth Boyden students thrive. So thank you for whatever resources you've allocated, and thank you for more.
Thank you, Mr. Pachi. Thank you, everyone who spoke on the budget. Not all of you, the people I've called on are people who indicated that their concerns were specifically budgetary, and this is the time when, if you have remarks planned, they should be just about the budget. So, for instance, there are individuals who are signed up to speak on the credit recovery program, but I'm assuming, for instance, that you wish to speak on broader issues than simply the budget. But if there is anybody who signed up on credit recovery or any topic whose remarks are confined essentially, as these speakers have been, to the budget. Anybody? Sir, your name?
Yes, Bruce Fryer.
Bruce Fryer, yeah, and you wanted to speak on credit recovery in, I assume, in a budget context.
In a budget context.
Absolutely. So please come on up. I haven't been having people identify your town. Some of you have been doing it, but welcome. Yeah.
Welcome. My son is a sophomore at Columbia High School. One of the things I did not see in the budget, whether on or off, is the child program. And it's been a program that's been difficult to get information on. And I just would like to speak of that for my 3 minutes. One way to evaluate the quality of the school system is how it treats its most challenging students. We just had several parents, right, and teachers from Seth Boyd talk about the difficulties, the added difficulties of teaching children that come from poverty. I'm a teacher in Newark, I know that well. But let me tell you about the Child program. It's a program that does not have a lot of students. It's a program that does not affect many people in this room. But it deeply affects those children who are involved with it. A quick story. So my son was a freshman. He's gone through, by the way, the complete Maplewood school system, a freshman last year at Columbia High School. He tests in the 95th percentile on standardized tests. He was failing his freshman year in most of his courses. He was a student in class that fell asleep twice a day in 2 different courses. He talked to teachers like, I don't know about Zach, he's not doing his work, he falls asleep in class, he's not motivated, he's surly. As a parent, what I knew about Zach was he came home almost every single day in tears saying, Dad, Mom, I do not want to go back to school tomorrow. He may not be the typical Chila student, but he, in many ways, embodies the same thing. Chila is for outliers. It's for students that are, square pegs that are trying to be placed in a round hole of a large public school, like Columbia High School. Now, one of the reasons why my son hates Columbia High School, the traditional Columbia High School, and I mean no offense to anyone. My son is an outlier. In middle school, he started a business. He's a fashion brand. My son learns how to write by writing for a fashion blog, whether it's his own or someone else's. My son learns persuasive speech because he negotiates manufacturing contracts with manufacturers in China, right, and in Afghanistan. My son learns math because he's the one responsible for running his e-commerce site and determining what are appropriate margins. We talk about the power of project-based learning. That's the education that my son is getting at a very young age. An education most people do not get until high school, until college and later. He's an outlier. Does he need his education? Absolutely. But place my son in a classroom of 25 students in any class, and he will go back to sleep. His mom and I last year spent thousands of dollars to figure out what is wrong with Zach. Why is it that this kid who tests so high, hates school so badly, falls asleep literally twice a day, right? 2 different classrooms. One in the morning, one afternoon. Did he have ADHD? We tested for that. Did he have a learning disability? We tested for that. Did he have a sleeping disorder? We didn't get to test that because he was so sick and tired of all of our testing. We looked at private schools. Could not afford them. Also very hard to find programs for that. But then we went to the high school, we spoke to high school administration, we spoke to the guidance people, and said, you know what, we had this program in Shiloh. And your son's a little bit different, but we think he's an interesting candidate, because we offer small classes. My son didn't need credit recovery, but because of that program, he will start his business full-time 1 year earlier. And when his peers are in their senior year in high school, he will be taking that year to see if he can run his business full-time. If he decides that he can't and he needs college, he will enter college the same year as his peers. That is an education that is invaluable. That has changed a child who might not be going to high school once he hits 16 to one that will graduate a year early. It does not affect a lot of us in this room. It does not affect a lot of students. They are expensive classes because they are small. But we cannot take care of students like my son. I question the value of a Maplewood education. Thank you. Please take that question.
We have another speaker signed up, and if your remarks are on budget matters with respect to Chila, I'd invite you to speak as well. That's Leslie Canta.
everybody's interested in hearing what CHILA is, so let me start with that. It's the Columbia High School Learning Academy. It's the alternative school that used to be in the Montrose building. And again, I'm not totally sure this belongs in the budget section, except that the kids have been told that the program is being cut, and that would only be for budget reasons. And what I can tell you is that I have emailed and talked to administrators and actually managed to get an in-person meeting, and I still can't tell you the status of this program. I am the daughter of 2 lawyers. I'm a professor at Columbia University. It's really hard for people not to answer my questions directly, and yet it has been done masterfully for the last 8 weeks or so. So I really want to just sort of make a couple of requests of the board. It is too bad that community members would have to come to the Board of Education, take up your time in the middle of the budget to say, could you just ask whether any changes are being made to this program? That would be the number 1 thing. The number 2 thing would be to sort of say, it was very interesting for me to hear the superintendent a couple of weeks ago. I saw most of you there, and when he was asked what his biggest accomplishments were, the very first thing he led off with was finding a building for an alternative school in one of his districts. So it strikes me that we have someone coming in who cares about alternative education, who understands that not every kid is going to fit into a very big traditional school kind of atmosphere. And so if you do find out that there are changes, then I would ask you to, in a very modest way, postpone those until Mr. Ramos gets here, is able to make an assessment, and can decide what makes sense. I also want to say, I mean, you're hearing an unusual story about CHILA. The truth of who's in CHILA is really our most disadvantaged kids. They are kids who are at very high risk for dropout, and I did try to look up our dropout statistics. They are way worse in Melbourne, which will surprise nobody. They are also worse in Montclair, even though Montclair actually has a higher poverty rate than we do. So we've got to keep our eye on that. That's a very basic bottom line stat. These are all kids who are at risk for dropout. These are our teen moms. This is a young man who was shot in Maplewood last year. I really care about the families who haven't even gotten wind of this yet, may not have been able to be here tonight, and those are the young people who I really want us to keep in mind. So please find out what's going on. Please make sure we protect this program at least till it can be better assessed. Thank you.
Yeah, and the points raised by the last 2 speakers in particular, along with the points raised by the speakers who spoke on Seth Boyden and budget issues in general, are now all on the table for the discussion. If, particularly in response to the last 2 speakers, if there's anything administration wants to start us out with, please.
There are no plans to cut the CHILA program.
Okay.
You know, as far as the enrollment, that fluctuates from year to year, but right now I'm not aware of any cuts being made in the program.
So just to follow up to Mr. Minley saying that in the next academic year, CHILA is scheduled to be exactly the same.
The only change that could be made, depending on the number of students, if a particular teacher was dedicating their entire schedule to students, and there are now not as many students in the program, it's possible that some of their schedule will be dedicated to CHILA and the rest of it to the other part of the school. But as far as the program itself, we're still serving those students. We're not asking students not to come back.
And new enrollment will come in next year.
As it comes, as those cases present themselves.
And if administration wishes to speak to a point, since the bulk of our speakers were in one way or another talking about Seth Boyden, and one of our speakers, I think, requested something in the line of sort of a summary of what the district has done, is doing in this budget in regard to Boyden, if that would be something that our administration in regard to Boyden is on one of the slides, but perhaps that could be amplified or clarified for all of us.